The stage lights were blinding. The theater was packed, and the giant America's Got Talent logo glowed behind him like a dream too big to touch. The little boy stood at center stage, heart pounding so loud he thought the judges could hear it. His name was Miguel Santos, a 13-year-old from a small fishing village in the Philippines. For him, just standing there was already a miracle. Back home, life was hard. Miguel grew up in a one-room bamboo hut perched above the ocean, where his mother sold dried fish and his father fixed boats for the fishermen. Every night, he fell asleep to the sound of waves and wind blowing through holes in the roof. They didn't have much, but they had each other, and Miguel had his voice. From the time he could speak, he sang. His mother said he could mimic any tune, any note, even before he could read. But there was one song he loved more than anything else, You Raise Me Up. It was his mother's favorite. Every time she was tired, she'd ask him to sing it, and for a moment, the world didn't seem so cruel. Then, tragedy struck. One stormy night, his father went out to sea to repair a boat before dawn. He never came back. The next morning, rescuers found his father's cap washed up on the shore. Miguel didn't cry for days. He just sat by the window, staring at the ocean that had taken everything from them. His mother held him, whispering that they had to stay strong. But she was getting weaker. Years of hard labor, little food, and endless grief took a toll. When Miguel turned 11, she fell ill. Hospitals were hours away, and medicine was expensive. He sang in the streets, hoping to earn enough coins for her treatment. Some days, he came home with a few pesos. Other days, with nothing. Still, every night, he'd sing by her bedside, hoping his voice could heal her. One evening, she smiled weakly and said, "When you sing, it feels like the angels are listening." Miguel replied, "Then I'll sing louder, Mama, so they can help you." She touched his cheek and whispered, "Promise me, if something happens to me, don't stop singing. Sing for the world, Miguel. Let them feel what's in your heart." A week later, she was gone. That night, Miguel sang in the rain outside their little hut, his voice breaking, his tears mixing with the downpour. The villagers heard him and wept. They said the ocean itself went silent to listen. From that moment, Miguel knew his mother's wish had to live on. 2 years later, a missionary group visited the village, bringing food and supplies. Among them was an American volunteer named Sarah, who was also a vocal coach back in Los Angeles. She heard Miguel singing at the edge of the pier, his voice echoing against the waves. She froze. It wasn't just talent, it was raw emotion, pain, and purity. She asked where he had learned to sing, and he simply said, "From my mother." Sarah was moved to tears. She recorded him on her phone and uploaded the clip online. Within days, it went viral, millions of views, thousands of comments, and people begging for him to be given a chance. Someone tagged the AGT producers, and just weeks later, Sarah received a call. They wanted Miguel to audition in person. But there was a problem, Miguel didn't even own a passport. The paperwork, the travel, the cost, it all seemed impossible. That's when strangers from around the world began donating. A GoFundMe campaign raised enough to bring him and Sarah to America. For the first time in his life, Miguel sat on an airplane, looking out at clouds and whispering, "Mama, I'm flying." When he landed in Los Angeles, everything felt unreal. Skyscrapers, lights, cars that moved like rivers of metal. Sarah took him to the AGT stage the day before audition so he could see where he'd perform. He stood there quietly, clutching a rosary his mother had left him. "This is for her," he whispered. The next day, when his turn came, he walked out barefoot. The audience murmured. One of the judges, Simon Cowell, leaned forward, puzzled. "Why no shoes?" Miguel smiled softly. "They're lucky feet, sir. They walked me here." The crowd chuckled gently, but there was something about his tone that made them fall silent again. "What's your name?" Simon asked. "Miguel Santos. And how old are you?" 13. "Where are you from?" "From the Philippines." Simon nodded. "And why are you here today?" Miguel looked down for a moment, then said, "To sing for my mother. She's watching from heaven." The theater went completely silent. You could hear people shifting in their seats, wiping their eyes before he even began. The orchestra lights dimmed, and the first notes of "You Raise Me Up" began to play. Miguel closed his eyes and sang. His voice was fragile at first, soft, trembling. Then it rose, pure and powerful, echoing through the auditorium. Every word carried his pain, his hope, his love. The audience leaned in, hypnotized. The camera zoomed in on Simon, who looked stunned, his usual stoic expression melting into awe. Sofia Vergara had tears streaming down her face. Heidi clasped her hands to her chest. By the time Miguel reached the final chorus, the entire audience was on their feet, hands raised, some sobbing openly. And when the last note faded, there was silence, just for a heartbeat, before the room exploded in applause. People screamed, cheered, and cried all at once. Miguel bowed, tears falling from his cheeks. Then, something happened he never expected. Simon stood up. For a moment, he didn't say anything. He just looked at the boy, then pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti rained from the ceiling, swirling around Miguel like blessings from above. He looked up, crying harder, whispering, "Mama, we did it." Sarah rushed on stage and hugged him tightly as the judges ran to congratulate him. The audience kept cheering. It wasn't just a performance, it was a spiritual moment. Even the crew behind the cameras wiped their eyes. Backstage, Miguel could barely speak. "I thought they wouldn't like me," he said between sobs. Sarah smiled. "They didn't just like you, Miguel. You touched their souls." The video of his performance broke records. Within 24 hours, it became one of the most viewed AGT clips of all time. People from across the globe shared it with messages like, "Faith in humanity restored," and, "This is why music exists." Reporters wanted to interview him, brands wanted to sponsor him, but Miguel wasn't interested in fame. He just wanted to sing for his mother. When the semi-finals arrived, producers gave him the choice of performing something new or repeating his golden buzzer song. But he wanted to tell a new story, his own. He wrote a song titled, "Waves of Home," inspired by the sea that took his father but also carried his dreams. It was his first original composition, and it spoke of love, loss, and hope. The night of the semi-finals, Miguel was nervous. One judge asked, "Are you ready?" Miguel nodded. "I don't know if I'm ready to win, but I'm ready to sing." When he performed, the theater was silent once again. His lyrics painted pictures, the salty wind, his mother's lullaby, the small wooden house. His voice cracked halfway through, but instead of breaking, it grew stronger. By the end, the audience wasn't just clapping, they were chanting his name. That night, he advanced to the finals. But success brought pressure. Reporters questioned whether he could handle fame. Some accused producers of using his story for views. Online, comments flooded in, some loving, others cruel. Miguel read one that said, "He's just another sob story." It hurt. He shut himself in his room for hours. Sarah found him sitting by the window, holding his mother's rosary. "They don't know me," he said. "They think I'm just sad." She sat beside him and said gently, "Then show them who you really are. Show them your joy." Those words lit a spark. For the finals, he decided to perform something unexpected, a lively Filipino folk song mixed with English lyrics. The stage was filled with dancers, drums, and bright colors. The audience clapped along, smiling and cheering. When he finished, Simon grinned. That, he said, was the performance of a star. Miguel didn't win first place that season, but he won something greater, hearts. His story spread worldwide. He was invited to perform at charities, churches, and even at the United Nations for World Children's Day. Each time, he carried a small picture of his mother in his pocket. One day, after a performance in New York, an elderly woman approached him. "You remind me of my son," she said. "He died young too. Thank you for making me believe he's still watching." Miguel hugged her and whispered, "Maybe they're both listening together." Years later, Miguel used his earnings to return to his village. The first thing he did was rebuild his old home. But instead of living there, he turned it into a small music school for children who couldn't afford lessons. On the front door, he painted the words, "For Mama." The village that once echoed with the sound of waves now echoed with songs. Every morning, he taught children how to sing, not just with their voices, but with their hearts. He told them, music doesn't come from the mouth, it comes from the soul. If you sing for love, people will listen forever. When AGT invited him back as a guest performer years later, he stood on the same stage, this time taller, older, confident. The judges welcomed him like family. He sang, "You Raise Me Up," again, and behind him, a giant screen showed photos of his mother and the school he built. The crowd erupted in tears once more. At the end, Simon said, "Miguel, you remind us what this show is really about. Not fame, not money, but hope." Miguel smiled through tears. "My mother always said, if you sing with truth, someone will feel less alone. I think she was right." As the applause roared, he looked up once more and whispered, "I kept singing, Mama." The camera zoomed in on his face, strong, peaceful, radiant. The boy who came barefoot to AGT left as a symbol of faith and perseverance. And somewhere in the hearts of millions watching, a spark was lit, a reminder that greatness doesn't come from where you start, but from how deeply you love and how fiercely you believe.